All right. Hey, good afternoon, folks. Once again, we are back taking a look at the tropics. Today is Tuesday, July 15th, 2025. This is your afternoon update on Invest 93L, our system moving across Florida today, moving towards the Gulf and getting ready to take its journey westward towards the states of Mississippi and Louisiana, and maybe even parts of coastal Alabama and western Florida Panhandle by the end of the week. So we got a lot to track here. System moving across Florida today. You think over land it would be kind of weakening, but actually doesn't look too bad this afternoon. This is kind of where the center of circulation would be. It's going to be hidden by some of these taller cloud tops here, but Invest 93L has been making its way across a little bit south of Jacksonville, north of Orlando kind of area, moving along like through Ocala, you could kind of roughly say, I guess, and has been moving generally off to the west. Again, that general trek will continue in some capacity and then move into Louisiana again by week's end. So let's go ahead and take a look at the National Hurricane Center's afternoon map. This is their 2 p.m. graphical update. 40% still holding from the NHC. I think that's probably a pretty good call. I think that's more like the potential for the tropical storm status. I think this is more likely than 40% to become a tropical depression, given the trends we've seen today. But they are still holding at 40%. More Hurricane Hunter flights are scheduled tomorrow, and they will pretty much be continuously in the storm once it leaves land tonight, but they can't fly it over land. It's kind of dangerous and kind of pointless when you have, observations on land. So they're going to get offshore, and once that moves out over to the Gulf, they will be back in action tomorrow morning and throughout the rest of the week. Looking at the presentation of 93L today, kind of did something interesting. So this morning, we kind of had this thing we were talking about where the low and mid-level vortex was trying to separate. Generally speaking, we had this low-level vortex kind of off the coast right here in the low levels. You can see the low-level cloud pattern kind of highlighting that. And then the mid-level cloud pattern we can see by this banding in the radar, meaning the mid-level circulation was probably somewhere over here, which is kind of down shear of the shear vector, which is pretty much out of the northeast. So the environmental winds are pushing the storm and leaning it over with height and moving all the thunderstorms down to one side. You can see where all the heavy rain and thunderstorms are all over the state. And then there's really just not much else going on here. Very sporadic activity. Otherwise, this is not particularly shocking given the trends and everything else. But something curious kind of happened today. Because 93L was over land during the day, it actually got a bit of a convective boost. It had some extra thunderstorms developing because it was over land in the middle of the day, so it kind of benefited from that daytime heating effect and the sea breezes and things like that. So some more thunderstorm activity happened, which kind of tugged that low-level center back towards it. So instead of that low-level center just racing away towards Jacksonville and just decaying out, it actually kind of started dragging it back towards the storm. And while it remains decoupled through this afternoon, we've seen pretty clear indications there's been some low pressure over Florida today. I forget I can't use my clicker on here like this. The hotkeys don't let me. So see if I can bumble my way through this. If you look at this observation station southwest of Jacksonville, they're showing a 989 here, which is basically an altimeter setting that's just lower than sea level pressure, which would be 992. But you can see here, there's 991 there, 992 there with the wind direction. 993 there and 991 there. So you can see we have winds cyclonically turning at 4 different stations nearby, and we can triangulate the lowering pressure being to the left of all 4 of these wind bars, which means your lower pressure is somewhere right in here. And if you look right there, you can see these little radar returns dancing around, and you begin to see that there is at least a very faint, but very much there, coherent low-level center with this still. Now, it is still very much displaced from the mid-level center, which is certainly more like over here. So you definitely don't have a great vortex alignment, but it's still trying to follow behind that mid-level low. The shear vector is more out of the east right here, so the centers are going to be a little more misaligned this way versus more like south and west. But all this is to say that 93L has survived the trek across Florida fairly well today. So you had to answer 2 questions this afternoon. How did 93L look coming across Florida? How is it looking coming into the Gulf? And then what was the trajectory? Well, we're answering both questions because we know it looks a little bit better than we expected. That's probably not great news. But what isn't so bad of news is that the actual center, let's just highlight it as this. Let's just kind of merge them together for the sake of argument. Is actually going to come off something like this. It's going to come out very close to the northern end of Apalachee Bay. That's nowhere near like Tampa or like Cedar Key or whatever else we were talking about. This is kind of on the northern end of what we were talking about for potential exit locations. It exits further north. Obviously, it has more time over water. Like if I zoom out the satellite here, you come out way up here, you have to contend with the fact that you're going to be very, very close to land through a lot of your journey. If you come out way, way south of it, like towards Tampa, you've got all this real estate and warm water to work with. And as the storm moves very close to land, it's going to have to deal with, land interaction. It's going to have to deal with thunderstorms popping up on the land, kind of pulling some convection away from it. There's other processes that happen. Basically, the closer it is to land, the less it's going to really be able to take off in terms of intensity. It won't completely kill it from trying to develop, but it's going to be another speed bump that the storm has to overcome. Okay. So in terms of track, what do we look at for the long-term track? Well, the long-term track is actually pretty simple. Big ridge building over the Tennessee Valley here, and it's going to be kind of centered like this. So high pressure moves things in this direction, and 93L is just going to move right up under this high, move right along, and move into Louisiana. And then as the week ends, the high kind of breaks down, and it kind of turns up into Louisiana as the week ends. There's not a lot of question about the general track. We know it's going to generally move almost due west or west southwest and then turn up into Louisiana. The question is how close exactly it gets to land. European model here shows the system not really doing a whole lot, basically staying very close to land, almost like pinwheeling around that low to mid-level center there. And then as it works out into the Gulf, it actually digs down a little bit. A lot of the models are indicating this situation where the storm kind of goes like this and then goes down a little bit, and then that's likely just a little bit of reformation over the water and then moves up into Louisiana over the weekend. So it's a subtle, but it's a very well represented little jump downward. I think that the ensembles are your best bet here right now for what's going to happen. I think the models that you'll see like these are kind of misrepresenting where the storm is right now. I mean, they're not wrong, but they're kind of incorrectly carrying that vortex too far on land. I don't think 93L will stay this far over land. I think it's going to be very much on the south side of this, all this guidance. And it is not unusual to see all of this guidance shift south or north together. So just because you see the spaghetti all clustered up does not mean that that's exactly what's going to happen. I've seen these all uniformly move together like 50 or 70 miles in one run cycle. So don't get too caught up on these just yet. But I think the ensembles show a much better picture of what we're kind of looking at. Whereas the skirt's pretty close to Apalachee Bay, kind of messes around in that central Florida Panhandle, and then catches some breathing room Wednesday night into Thursday, which is this kind of section of its journey right here. And you can see all the colors on both of these models indicating that if it's going to make a run at tropical depression, which is dark blue, or tropical storm, which is green, it's going to be pretty much right south of Mississippi sometime late Wednesday, early Thursday before this gets back into land. And that's the window that we will potentially have to watch for this become tropical depression 4 and or tropical storm Dexter. Models indicate shear is going to be an issue throughout the rest of its journey, easterly to southeast, northeast to easterly kind of wind shear. H-Werf parent model shows it. GFS kind of shows it on the average sounding southeast down here, more mid-level east to south-south or east-southeast. Kind of in the mid-levels, a little bit of mid-level dry air as well on the GFS average sounding. So it's going to still have some dry air and some apparent wind shear. Neither of these look like just killers, but I think that's definitely going to keep the pot lid on this to a degree in terms of the upper bounds of the intensity. I personally think this is probably going to get towards tropical storm status. I think it's going to be a pretty low-grade tropical storm, probably in that 45, 50, sort of range is probably where this is going to wind up given the marginal environment offset by the warm waters near the coast here. So no big surprises there. The big story is really going to be rainfall. All the models have kind of come down in terms of rainfall. I would urge us not to worry about the global models just yet until this has a little bit more of a coherent form to it. Instead, I do like the WPC official rainfall totals. This is showing that basically 2 to 3 inches for most of the Florida's Panhandle's coastline. The rainfall you guys get will be more sporadic, heavy at times, but not every backyard, not all the time. But as we work into Mississippi, Alabama on Wednesday night into Thursday, maybe even early Friday, that's when a lot of your rain's going to fall. And you can see that some of the Mississippi coast and southern Alabama coast are looking at potential for at least 3 to 5 inches of rain. And there are pockets here that are passing 6 inches of rain. And then Louisiana looks like they may get it the worst with a widespread total of 4 to 6, but then a lot of pockets where we're we're talking about closer to 8 to 10 inches. And I really stress that this is not going to be moving all that fast. I mean, from Wednesday to like Friday, it's only going to move about this far, which looks kind of far, but it's really not. And then this is probably going to sit around and linger on the backside of the ridge to the weekend, and it's going to keep this whole area in that kind of soupy tropical moisture that this storm is going to bring with it. And I would caution that the potential for a slow-moving, decaying tropical cyclone and a very, very moist environment to dump a ton of rain, as we just saw out in Texas with Kerrville and the flooding out there, that is not to be underestimated. And I think that the flash flood guidance is going to come up even more than it already is. We're already looking at day 4, moderate 40% risk being introduced to much of southeast Louisiana. Those slight risks, no joke either, 15% go all the way back to Mississippi on Friday and all the way into eastern Texas on Friday. So this whole region, as we work towards the weekend, this thing probably has a short window where it's a tropical storm, then it falls apart as it goes on land, but that does not mean the threats are over. And I think at the end of the day, the book is going to be much, much more the flooding rainfall threat that comes with this, not so much if it gets named or not. No one's really going to care if it's Tropical Storm Dexter with 50-mile-an-hour winds into a beach town in southeast Louisiana on an oil rig or something. But they are going to care about the potential for a foot plus of rain falling in central Louisiana, causing widespread flooding. That is very possible with this system and probably not being talked about enough at this current time. So definitely expect a lot of heavy rain. I do think this is at least going to be a tropical depression, probably tomorrow sometime in the afternoon, and I think this will make a run of that TS status just before landfall. But again, guys, heavy rainfall coming for much of the region here into the weekend, and a lot of impact still to come. So we're going to keep tracking 93L. We'll have all the updates on Facebook. We'll do daily videos all week. We're going to have everything we need to have throughout the landfall. So just keep tuning into the page, and we'll keep tracking it. So as always, guys, thanks for watching, and have a good one.